Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Beavercreek Board of Zoning Appeals on this November the 12th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Could I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Barhorst? Here. Mr. Rader? Here. Mr. Roach?
Present.
Ms. Vest? Mr. Essman?
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
There being a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Could I also get a motion to approve the minutes of the July 9th, 2025 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for the City of Beavercreek?
Motion to approve the July 9th meeting of the Beavercreek Board of Zoning Appeals.
Is there a second?
I second.
There being a motion and a second on the floor, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes of the July 9th meeting say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion carries. Moving on to new business, we have two public hearings tonight. So we will get started with case number V25-3, Ashley and Oswald De La Cruz, to 2571 Merwood Court. Madam Secretary.
This is case number V25-3 on an application filed by Ashley and Oswaldo De La Cruz, 2571 Merwood Court, Beavercreek, Ohio, 45431. Requesting a variance from Chapter 158.104A of the City of Beavercreek Zoning Code to construct an accessory structure within the front yard. The property is located on the northwest side of Merwood Court, 3 lots north of the intersection of Ruston Drive and Merwood Court, further described as Book 1, Page 4, Parcel 118 on the Greene County Property Tax Atlas.
Thank you. The staff have a presentation for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, BZA members. Today, the case we have for you today is case V25-3, basically 2571 Merwood Court. This case actually is, you're kind of rehearing a case that had been to BZA previously. Back in November of 2023, the applicant applied for a variance to allow a shed in their front yard. And at that time, BZA approved their variance request, given the uniqueness of their lot. But variance requests are only good for a year. And so their variance had expired, and they actually ran into some things. They originally were asking for, I think, a 600 and some square foot accessory structure. And some of the building requirements that they were looking at stuff caused them not to build it. So now they're coming back almost 2 years later, requesting basically a variance for a 200 square foot shed. So it's less than a third of what it originally was proposed to be. So basically, here's our little drive-by video. This is very short because they live on a cul-de-sac. So it's just basically kind of a pan across the front of their property. Basically, at this property location, they are on, it's kind of a kite-like shaped lot. And the area that's highlighted in kind of a pink there is the actual area that they're allowed to put an accessory structure for this lot. The uniqueness about this lot, and here's where they're proposing. The uniqueness about this lot is basically the terrain. Their whole property is basically a hillside. And so the only real flat area that they're allowed to put, the only real flat area that they can easily put a shed is where the old house was. There was a house that was here prior to the tornado of 2019. The house was destroyed, and when the applicant purchased this property, they moved the house to the back of the lot instead of rebuilding on where the original house was. And so where that original house was kind of really the only kind of flat area on the parcel. And and they really couldn't put a shed anywhere on this parcel outside of needing a variance because the house is so far back in the lot and given the topography there. So this is basically in this picture here, you can kind of see, if I can get this pointer to work, back here in the back, you can see this little gravel pad. That's basically where they're asking to locate the shed. There's a little bit closer up version of that. So basically, looking at our criteria, basically whether the property could yield a reasonable return. Staff felt like, they could, a lack of a variance would not prohibit them from getting a reasonable return on the property. So we didn't think they met that criteria. The second criteria was whether or not the variance was substantial, and staff believed it is substantial given the fact of where the shed was going to be located out in front of the property. But the whole purpose of a variance is, to where there's a practical difficulty to grant a variance. So while it is kind of significant, it's kind of, staff felt it was necessary given the location of the terrain of the property. Whether or not the essential character of the neighborhood or properties would suffer detrimentally as a result of the variance, we do feel like they do meet this. The shed will be located behind the other houses, significantly behind the other houses in that cul-de-sac. So even though it is in front of their house, it's significantly behind the neighboring houses. And so we feel like that one was satisfied. Whether or not the variance would affect the delivery of government services, obviously we feel it meets that the location of the shed would not negatively impact the delivery of governmental services. Criterion number 5, whether the property owner purchased property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions at the time they purchased it. It was the applicant's choice, in our opinion, it was the applicant's choice to relocate their house to the back. They had opportunity in that whole process to find out what our zoning restrictions were and all that kind of stuff, and the future of purchasing, or if they wanted to build structures on the property. So we didn't feel they met that criteria for that reason, just because they did certainly have opportunity to research that when they located their new house. Criterion number 6, whether property owner's predicament can be feasibly corrected by some other method. And we do feel like they met that, because given the terrain of that parcel, there really is not a good place, really a good other place to put that. And then lastly, whether the spirit and intent of the code behind would be observed and substantial justice to be done by granting the variance. And again, staff feels like there would be substantial justice being granted in the granting of this variance request, given the layout of their property and the location that they're requesting the shed to be located. So based upon the criteria, staff is recommending that BZA grant the variance request.
If none, allow me to open the public hearing. Public hearing closed. Is there anyone wishing to address the board's zoning appeal from this case?
The applicant is not here, just for the record.
Since no one's here, I will close the public hearing. Hamilton, have a aye.
Yeah, yeah, it will be visible from the neighboring house, because it is, you will be able to see it from the roadway, but it will be behind all the other houses. I mean, it's in a cul-de-sac, so you're kind of see what's behind anybody's house in that situation. But yes, it will be visible from the neighboring houses.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, can I get a motion from someone?
Mr. Chairman, on the basis that the requirements of 158.172 H5A have been fully satisfied, I move for the adoption of the variance requested.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, can you call the roll?
Mr. Rader?
Yes.
Mr. Roach? Ms. Vest? Ms. Barhorst? Mr. Essman?
Yes. Thank you very much. Moving along, we have another public hearing today, as soon as I can find my paper. And it's public hearing V24-4, Madam Secretary, can you update us on this request, please?
This is case number V 25-4 on an application filed by Haley and Andrew Mogenberg, 1680 North Laddie Court, Beavercreek, Ohio, 45432, requesting a variance from Chapter 158.105A of the City of Beavercreek zoning code to allow a 6-foot-high fence to remain in the required front yard along Haynes Road on a double frontage lot in an R1A district. The property is located on the west side of Haynes Road, 4 lots north of the intersection of Haynes Road and Edinburgh Drive, further described as Book 5, Page 4, Parcel 176 on the Greene County Property Tax Atlas.
Thank you very much. Can we have a staff report, please?
So this variance request is for a fence that's currently located in the front yard. It is a double frontage lot. The house is located on North Laddie, and so the house fronts North Laddie Court, and it also fronts to the rear Haynes Road. So because it has basically, it fronts two different roads, it's considered a double frontage lot. It fronts in the front and also fronts to the rear of the house. And our zoning code requires that houses, basically properties, cannot have a fence taller than 48 inches in a required front yard. So that required front yard in an R1A, like an R1A zoning district, is the first 40 feet behind the front property line. So, you know, in this case, we have a front property line here. So that house was probably built at that 40-foot front yard setback. You can't, that front yard, required front yard, you're not allowed to build structures in that, and you can not have fences over 48 inches in that area. But because this is a double frontage lot, there's also the front property line to the rear, and you also have that required front yard in the rear. I'll show another picture of that. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but here's the property, the driveway of the property. There's the fence that's been built along that rear property line. So when looking at this, basically these are the houses that basically have multiple frontages along that stretch there of Haynes Road. The ones in green are the ones that have permits. The ones in cream colored basically have they basically have no fence. And then there's an orangish colored one toward the south that had a permit, but it's non-conforming. And there's two red parcels that have fences that don't have permits. The one on the south, which is this one right here, basically they have a 6-foot privacy fence that extends into the required front yard. The fence has been there for a number of years, and the property owner basically was notified a few years ago that in the event that they replace their fence, it'll have to be brought into conformance. The fence has been there for an extended period of time. The other fence is up here at the top. I think it's actually like a 48-inch chain link or something, but also the same thing. I mean, it's been there, we don't know how many years. It's been there for an extended period of time. So again, I don't know that the fence is not necessarily non-compliant of the fact that it was constructed without a permit years ago. So if they ever replace their fence, they'll have to get a permit for that. So, and then the applicant's parcel property is this blue one right here. So this is another look of their house, the fence along Haynes Road, the rear side of their house along Haynes Road. This is the applicant's drawing, their site plan. As you can see, and their site plan, the fence is basically in red going around. So it's, on the south side, the fence is about 118 feet long from the house to the rear property line, or to that front property line along Haynes Road. And what I did was I actually took that and kind of to help the board see kind of what the situation is. The blue line is basically where they've constructed their fence. The red hash is the required front yard on that side. And the green hash is an area, let me back up a second. A couple years ago, BZA heard a case on South Laddie that was almost identical to this one. Norm,
I think I was the only one on the board.
you might have been. We heard a case that was almost identical to this. In that case, the board denied the variance request for that fence. And we've been dealing with, the city's been trying to work to get these taller, non-conforming fences into compliance. So as they're, as people are replacing them, we're having them move them back and different things like that. But staff also understood, and we had some conversations, I think, with BZA at the time even. We understood, the challenge to, having, nothing within that, basically nothing over, 4 feet, or at the time is actually 42 inches in that required front yard. So we made a zoning code change, and we raised our height from 42 inches to 48 inches in the required front yard. And we also are allowing on double frontage lots the allowance of the fence to encroach 20 feet into that required front yard setback. So in this case, basically the applicant, and with the zoning code change, before the zoning code change, they would have had to have their privacy fence here on this side of that green line. With our zoning code change, the applicant can actually build their fence here on this other, that's the 20 feet. So they can be in that green hashed area, anywhere in that, they can move up and encroach 20 feet into that front yard setback with their fence. In the case of the applicant here, it puts the fence, if they relocated the fence to where it would be legally allowed, they would be behind their small shed here, but they'd also, looks like, will be in front of this row of trees that they have planted to the rear. But we made that zoning code change, planning commission, and staff, we looked at that and made that zoning code change to allow some flexibility to, allow, fences taller than 42 inches to kind of encroach into that front yard setback, but yet still provide kind of an open space so that we don't, we're not creating kind of a walled corridor down our major thoroughfares and things like that. So it allows some openness, but yet, not allowing them all the way up to the front property line. Now, just so the board knows, we do have a situation. One place that people like to point to are the fences that went along Fincastle, and when they did the Kemp Road expansion of the roadway up there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but there were some fences that were 6 foot that were put back that are non-conforming. And the reason that was done was because those would have had been brought into compliance over time as they're being replaced, but because the city did a road project, we are the ones that actually took the fences out, and so therefore they were put back in the same spot. And so those fences are there, but again, once those fences are replaced, they're going to be required to be brought in compliance, just like the other ones. So the city's working towards, bringing these, where there are some non-conforming fences into compliance. So anyway, so looking at our criteria, basically whether the property would yield a reasonable return, staff doesn't feel like they meet that criteria because they would still get beneficial use of the property, would still be able to yield a reasonable return if they were denied the variance request. They can build, let me back up, they can build the area in blue, outside of this green, from the green line to the front property line, they can have a 48-inch fence in that area. They just can't have anything over 48 inches. So if they wanted to strictly have a privacy fence, they could put it on that green line right there. But if they wanted a fence beyond that, it would have to be limited to 48 inches from that point forward. So, the second criterion, whether or not the variance is substantial, staff feels that it is substantial because they're basically requesting 100% variance. They want a variance that allows them to encroach 100% into the required front yard. And again, we made a zoning code change in 2023 to allow some flexibility and encroaching into some of that required front yard. So we did allow some flexibility, but we still think that, 100% encroachment would definitely be substantial. Criterion number 3, whether the character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered. We don't feel that they meet this. There are fences, like I said, one of the first graphics I showed you were the other properties along that line. Pretty much everyone has either no fence or a compliant fence. To allow a 6-foot fence into that area, even though there are some compliant fences in that area as far as being 48 inches, to allow a 6-foot fence would be out of character with some of that, aside from the one property to the south that's going to have to bring theirs into compliance. It is out of, character with those other fences. There are other people that have 6-foot fences that are, actually the one is actually it was built before we made the zoning code change. So it actually is at that 40-foot. It's outside of that total required front yard. So we don't feel that they met that criterion. Whether or not the variance would adversely affect delivery of government services, obviously we feel like they met that criteria. We don't think that having the fence there would necessarily negatively impact the delivery of governmental services. Criterion number 5, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions. Obviously, as staff, we don't know if they knew of this zoning restriction when they purchased the property, but certainly had they or their contractor applied for a permit prior to the construction of their fence, we could have educated them on what the requirements of the zoning code are, and they could have made those decisions prior to the construction of the fence instead of coming after the fact and kind of asking for forgiveness for building in an area that they shouldn't have. The other thing is, our zoning code is publicly available online, so anybody at any time could go online and look and see what our zoning requirements are. So we don't feel like they met that criterion. Number 6, whether the property owner's predicament, if there's other remedies for satisfying that. We don't believe that there's a practical difficulty that would prevent the applicant from constructing a compliant fence. They have the ability to build a compliant fence if they want. Their plans for their fence just contradicts what the zoning code requires. And so we feel there's other means to satisfy the requirements of the zoning code outside of having their fence encroach 100% into the required front yard. And then lastly, whether the spirit and intent behind the code requirement would be observed or substantial justice done by granting the variance. Staff does not believe they met this also. Again, we have that in place for a reason. It's to have openness and other things. And, again, in 2023, we made some zoning code changes to allow some flexibility there. But there's plenty of other people who are meeting those zoning requirements for setbacks in the required front yard for fences. And so, to grant the variance without a practical difficulty would basically, instead of doing substantial justice, would be giving special privilege to someone that, without really having a true justification for building that there. So.
Any questions for Matt?
Or you want to have the applicant speak first?
Sure. As you approach, if you could, there's a little note up there on the upper left-hand corner. If you could read that, please, and
Sure.
attest to that. Thank you.
I, Haley Mogenberg, affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. First off, I'd like to thank the Beavercreek Board of Zoning Appeals, city staff, and residents for your time this evening as you consider our variance request to keep our 6-foot privacy fence at its current placement. My husband, AJ, and I are Beavercreek High School sweethearts who have lived in Beavercreek for nearly 30 years. We are the 3rd generation of our family to plant roots here in the city. When we purchased our home back in 2018, we weren't looking for our typical starter home. We were looking for our forever home, a place to raise our family in the city that we have loved our whole lives. We recently got a 6-foot privacy fence installed on our property line back in August. Our old chain link fence was rusted and the gate was broken, presenting a hazard because it no longer contained our daughter safely in our backyard, which is on the busy thoroughfare of Haynes Road. We hired Troy Copley from Copley Construction to complete the work for us. Troy has installed fences for friends and family, and we have even hired him previously to do other projects at our house. It stated in our contract that he would pull the required permits, and we had no reason to doubt that because we trusted him. Unfortunately, though, through a neighbor's complaint, we discovered that our fence was installed without a permit, and through that complaint, we were educated that our house is considered a double frontage lot and had special zoning rules specific to that property. The rule being that our fence had to be 4 feet tall or less, or be moved back 20 feet off the property line. We were blindsided and shocked. We had no idea we couldn't replace the old fence with a privacy fence, and had no idea that Troy had broken our contract. We also knew it wasn't realistic for us to move the fence 20 feet back. Sorry, I lost my place. We have a lot of mature trees in that 20 feet line there that would have to be severely damaged or removed in order to move it, and we also have a shed that would be in the way as well. And even if we could realistically move it 20 feet forward, we'd be losing 17% of our backyard that we would no longer be able to enjoy on a daily basis. There are two main reasons that we had originally decided to install a 6-foot privacy fence. First and foremost, it was for our growing family's safety. Haynes Road is on a busy thoroughfare where cars travel 24/7 and are often speeding. We wanted to protect our 3-year-old daughter with a tall fence so we didn't have to worry about her climbing out of the yard and prevent trespassing on our property. We know that the city plans to eventually widen Haynes Road and add sidewalks, and that is something we are genuinely looking forward to. We love the idea of being able to take sidewalks to reach State and Xenia with ease, and have seen several car accidents occur at the entrance of our Edinburgh subdivision from cars being impatient and swerving around vehicles that are turning. But with the widening of that road, that means our property will have additional foot traffic through the easement and feel privacy fences necessary to protect our belongings and our family. The second reason we chose a 6-foot privacy fence for our home is we want to install an in-ground pool in the upcoming spring. My husband and I both grew up going to local pools like Idle Hour Swim Club and canoeing down the river at the Narrows. We both have a passion for water and swimming and want to share that love with our own family. Unfortunately, though, my husband AJ is immunocompromised due to a kidney transplant, and he can no longer swim in fresh bodies of water or attend public pools for safety concerns. A pool in our backyard would give us the flexibility to control the pool chemicals to be compliant with my husband's safety and ensure our daughter has those same precious memories that we had growing up with our parents. And in order to build that pool, a minimum of 5-foot fence is required. The purpose of zoning resolutions, as we have come to understand them, is to ensure safety, happiness, and a secure sense of community for all residents of the city of Beavercreek. However, there are always unique situations that deserve the consideration of exceptions for the all to apply. We feel that our property located on a busy 35-mile-per-hour thoroughfare of Haynes Road is one of those exceptions. Our goal is simple: to create a small sanctuary away from the road where we can enjoy life, host gatherings for our friends, family, and neighbors, and raise our family, all without having to worry about the dangers of Haynes Road. As lifetime residents, we are dedicated to enhancing the family-friendly and safe atmosphere that drew us to remain in this community forever. We believe that our fence not only provides safety and comfort, but it also adds aesthetic value to our home and the surrounding properties. Several neighbors actually wrote letters in support of our 6-foot privacy fence, saying that it matches other properties in the Edinburgh subdivision who have similar 6-foot fences. We also provided examples to the board of other double frontage properties on Kemp Road who have the same style 6-foot privacy fence as ours, so we know it's aesthetically pleasing in other areas of the city. With all of that said, I respectfully ask that you approve our variance so that we can continue building the perfect home in this incredible community that AJ and I have considered to be our hometown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Matt, can you put the map up again, please? Yeah, actually, so if I'm correct, the 6-foot fence could be built upon the green line. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Chairman, we did receive 8 letters that I wanted to put into the record. The BZA members did receive a copy of each, and those letters were in support of the variance case.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry.
So, Madam, I'd like to confirm
Sure.
on I guess that would be the east end of the green line,
Yes,
they could construct a 6-foot privacy fence.
yes. So it would be behind this little shed here, but yet still kind of in front of these, on the house side of these trees, this line of trees right here. I scaled that out on a drawing so that you guys could
Right.
see how that actually would kind of lay out.
And that was a result of the Board of Zoning Appeals asking the planning board to look at the zoning code for lots with 2 front yards, correct?
Yeah, because we certainly recognized in dealing with some of the other places like Castle where they're backing up to Kemp Road and some other places. I mean, obviously this isn't the only place in town where we have double frontage lots, and so obviously staff and it certainly was spurred by a discussion with BZA after that denial of the variance request in 2023 or maybe it was 2021.
If memory serves me, we had 3 or 4 cases like that over the years.
Yeah, that was the only, we have some corner lot ones, but there's only been, in the last 15 years, there's only been 3 double frontage cases. And the most recent one being, I think it was 2021, the one on South Laddie. That was denied. But yes, I mean, this change of the zoning code was partially a result of recognizing the conflict trying to provide some flexibility for people that have, double frontage lots. I mean, staff certainly, we recognize the challenge if you can't, fence in anything over 48, at the time it was 42 inches, within that 40 feet of the road that behind you. So that's where, working with BZA, Planning Commission, Council, we increased that. We allowed an encroachment of 20 feet and actually raised the height of the fence to 48 inches, which is pretty much a standard size fence anymore.
Board members have any questions, comments? You get 2 times.
I thought he said 6 feet, so was it 48 inches for that back?
So you can have up to, in this green hashed area, you could have a 6-foot fence anywhere within this. So anywhere from the yard all the way up to this line, this east green line right here, you can have a 6-foot fence. So the applicant has, their fence on the south side was 118 feet long. So they're still can have, from this down almost 100 feet of yard that's going to be fenced in. There's obviously plenty of space for a swimming pool and other recreational things that, as far as their backyard and having that fence in. Moving the fence in 20 feet is certainly not going to prevent them from having a swimming pool or have a large area to, for their kids to play in, things like that. Because they're going to be, they're, like I said, I think the top line, this top fence was like 120 some feet, and the bottom was like 118 from what their contract had showed. I think it was, yeah, there it is. So that's currently what the red line was currently what they had constructed, their contractor had constructed. And we certainly, feel for the applicant and the fact that their contractor did not follow through with their obligation to obtain a permit, because this obviously could have been, alleviated as far as at least the construction of the fence. We could have had that discussion prior to constructing the fence instead of after, but that's from our perspective, that's something they'll need to take up with their contractor, as far as the contractor's failure to obtain a permit in violation of their contract.
Anything else?
I've got a few questions for everybody. So first, help me understand, I look at the criteria under number 3. Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. And staff's conclusion is staff believes that approving the variance request and allowing the fence to remain on the front property line would work against the city's pursuit of being the non-conforming fences, of bringing, I think it's supposed to be, the non-conforming fences into compliance and continuing to alter the character of the neighborhood. I don't think that's answering the question. So explain to me, with respect to this application and this neighborhood, how is anybody affected by having a 6-foot fence in this location?
Well, basically, if they're permitted to have, if that 6-foot fence is encroaching, if other people with 6-foot fences, if they're to be, if with the encroachment 20 feet off that front property line, if this property is allowed to singly encroach that 100% into that required front yard, then, it obviously is affecting the looks of the road when you go down the road, because you're going to have this 6-foot fence that's encroaching significantly farther into the road than any other fence that would be 6 feet.
Go back to the picture.
Which one?
Oh,
That one?
that one. So there are fences, to follow up on you, there are fences that along that front lawn.
There are fences distance-wise in the same location,
There are
correct?
fences densest-wise in the same location, that's correct.
Okay. And the fence that was there was in the same location, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask this to staff, though. Do we know the height of the fence that was replaced?
It was an older chain link fence, so I'm assuming it was probably around 42 inches.
Okay, we'll confirm with them in a
Yeah.
minute. Okay, but I'm just finding the argument very circular here.
Okay.
I understand what the goal of the city is,
Sure,
and I'm not arguing that it's not the goal to be achieved.
sure.
But I still am trying to understand how staff believes that if that fence were 2 feet shorter from the distance between the shed to the road, that this neighborhood would be changed somehow.
Okay.
And I've got a stack of input from adjacent property owners that disagree with you.
Okay.
So what do you say to them? How is it affecting the neighborhood that we're not getting, that I'm not getting?
Sure.
That's the question. It's, the fence, if it were 2 feet shorter, would still be in the same spot
Correct.
where it was previously.
Correct.
All right, well, I guess we'll leave that and move on. When we have properties that have front yard frontage, I guess, both on the front exposure of the residence where they would ingress and egress at their front entry, but also the backyard, where is the backyard? Or is there one?
Right. So basically, on these types of properties, they have basically 2 front yards. And they have, basically the front yard is from the street to the house. So basically have 2 front yards and 2 side yards, essentially.
Okay, so the answer is there is no backyard.
There is no backyard.
As defined by the zone code. Okay. What could you tell me about properties that would be equivalent to this in other neighborhoods that would have a busy thoroughfare on the back and also be accessed on the front so that we have the same front yard problem on both sides? I see it on Haynes Road, but where else would I see it?
Yeah, Kemp is probably the major other location where we, is probably the most notable. There's not very many, but Kemp would be the primary one that would come to mind, because the houses front Fincastle, but they also front and to the rear of the house, Haynes Road,
Okay.
which
And-
is the one the applicant was making reference to.
Okay. And if I understood even what brought us here, there was a complaint that was brought to the department, correct?
Correct.
And without getting into specifics about how it came to be reported, was there anything other than the location and/or the height that was at issue? Was it the quality? Was it something else?
No, the fact that it was just the location and the height, and the fact that it was constructed without a permit.
Okay.
Were the items that were in violation.
Okay. And did staff find that the applicant's assertion that they had hired a contractor who was to be responsible for all of that, did staff conclude that that was legitimate and some misunderstanding as between those two parties? or did we think that that's not true?
No, we have no reason to question the fact that, you know, that that the contractor was responsible for obtaining the permit. I mean, we have no reason to doubt that that wasn't the case. Ultimately, our code, you know, the property owner is ultimately responsible for compliance of their property, you know, and so it was basically their responsibility to make sure their contractor followed through with what they agreed to do in their contract.
Okay. So at the end of the day, I think this is what I'm left with. Staff would think that fence would be just fine if we had a permit and it was 40 feet back from where it is.
Yeah, or 20 feet even. Yeah.
Okay. And the same height at 20 feet, at 20 feet
Right.
back. Okay.
Matt, am I correct in saying that it would also be okay if that were 4 feet? There's two options. One is to move
Right.
it, and the other is to lower
Shorten
the
it,
section
right,
that
where it is.
goes
Yeah, they
beyond
can
that.
either, that last 20 feet, they can either lower it to 4 feet, or if they want to maintain that 6-foot height, move it back to 20 feet from the front property line adjacent to Haynes Road.
Okay. And I won't ask you to speak for them. I'll talk to them in a second. But I'm sure that they have already discussed with you what they feel are the practical difficulties of doing either of those things, right?
Just as expressed in their
Okay.
justification, sure.
When staff concludes it wouldn't be hard to come into compliance, we'll just move the fence back. As the homeowner, how would you expect that to be addressed?
That would be something, obviously, they would need to take up with their contractor, since their contractor, you know, was kind of in violation of their, if in the contract it was specified that the contractor was responsible for obtaining permits and stuff. If the contractor failed to obtain those permits, then I would go back to the contractor, and it would be the contractor's responsibility. I mean, ultimately, it's their responsibility to make sure their fence is in compliance. but-
I got that, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm actually looking for a different angle. It's staff's conclusion that this would be easy to remedy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
So as the homeowner, what would you expect the homeowner to accomplish? We just take it down from where it is, put some new posts, and move everything back? It's all reused?
Yes, yes.
And staff
correct.
thinks that that's something that can be easily done?
It certainly is possible. I mean, it certainly can be done.
Just to be
look
clear,
at
the
fence.
practical difficulties test, it's whether, not after they've already violated it, is it easy
I
for
know.
them to go back?
Yeah, I'm not confusing the standard.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure I understood what the staff's conclusion was based on.
Sure. Our conclusion that it can be reasonably accomplished.
Okay. All right, and I'll ask you while I've still got you here, but I need to ask these folks. When they make the claim, we can't really do that because we're going to disturb the trees somehow, right? If we are constructing a pool there somewhere, are we going to be having a problem with the trees anyway?
Yeah, that certainly would be a good question for the applicant. I don't necessarily see how that, in my opinion and staff's opinion, I don't necessarily see how the trees would be too negatively impacted, because it, you know, it looks like based upon that, this drawing here, the fence could be, where the fence could be located, would be behind that, the smaller shed, but still in front of the trees. So I think it would have, you know, minimal, if any, impact on the trees.
Okay.
And then again, there's plenty of opportunity for a pool in that rear yard.
Okay.
But the impact of the trees to the pool, I can't answer.
Okay. All right, thank you.
For the applicant.
I do. All right, so let's start first with the trees.
Let's swear in first.
I apologize, yes.
Oh,
How
yeah.
you were.
So, I, Andrew Mogenberg, affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give before the Board of the Zoning Appeals and the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth and the best of my knowledge.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mogenberg,
Yeah.
explain to me, if the fence were moved back 20 feet, we seem to be past the canopy of the trees. What is it that you think would be damaging or harmful?
Well, so there's 9 trees back there total. 8 of those are pine trees, so they go down all the way to the ground, the trunks or the branches on the lower side. So by the shed, there are certainly, 2 or 3 pine trees right there at that green line that would definitely have to be trimmed, probably to the trunk, honestly, because it's right up against that shed. It's hard to see from this picture. There is, about middle of the yard, there is a non-pine tree that it's about 20 and a half feet off of that fence. And my concern is that I'm going to have to cut that entire tree down in order to comply with that 20 feet back. Because again, we want to put a pool in, so you can't just put the fence down to 48 inches. We have to move it back, you know, or, yeah.
If I'm correct, it appears to me that this area is the canopy of the trees that you're talking about, right? Right in here?
The top side. That'd be the north side, I think, right? Right where the shed is. There's three pine trees right there that are butted up right against that shed.
Okay, so to the left of the screen line?
At the top of the screen. Yep, yeah.
And they're to the left of the green line, because I'm just not seeing them.
They're on the green line.
Okay. And how old would you estimate those trees to be, if you know?
So this is an aerial view, and you can go back as 2003, I think is what I saw, and those trees have been there at least that long.
Okay.
Along with the shed and everything else that's there.
All right. Well, I'm sure I'm not sharing new information with you, and you've heard the staff's presentation this evening. They say, hey, it's not about gifting these out to nice people
Yep.
who have lived here a long time. It's establishing some continuity so people are getting the same answers to the same questions.
Yep.
And we don't want arbitrarily high fences in the wrong spots, and we want the rules to be enforced uniformly for everybody. And in fact, we've even had this in other locations that are equivalent. We get all the time, by the way, people who bring us pictures of, well, that yard has it and this one doesn't, and why are you telling us no?
Yep.
And we find out that maybe it's just a non-conforming use, where something was already there before the zoning code was even adopted.
Yep.
Right? So I never know when people bring me those things if that's the case or not.
Yes.
But the point being that we've had other applicants who've gone through this process. They've been denied the same relief.
Okay.
And you think you're entitled to it. So how do you address that concern to staff?
Again, the trees to me, I think, are the biggest thing at play here. I mean, we could just put the fence down to the 48 inches, but I mean, again, we'd like to have a pool, and I feel like we should be allowed to have one if we want one, but from my understanding, there's a requirement that it has to be at least 5 feet high. So that 48 inches, that doesn't cut it. So, we talked about that 1630 household, and they actually have 2 fences in their property. They have one around just their pool, and they have a 42-inch that bridges the gap between the 2 6-foot fences on the corner and next to them. And, could we move it back 20 feet? Absolutely. But the problem with that is going to be those trees. And one of those trees will have to come down in order to comply with this 20-foot setback.
And I'm going to ask you only if you know, as you have alluded to, there's going to be some road widening in that area.
From my understanding.
Do you know how much of this area is going to be affected? Has anybody shared that with you?
No, but
It's not
that
these
measurement is
departments.
32 feet.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
You have anything? Anything? Second chance? Any further discussion among the board? Hearing none, I will accept the motion on this case.
I will do I'm going to go ahead and move to deny the variance based on not meeting the criteria in Chapter 158.172 H5A of the City of Beavercreek zoning code.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, would call the roll.
Mr. Roach,
No.
Ms. Vest, Ms. Barhorse,
The other way around.
The motion is to deny the variance. They are saying to grant the variance.
That's why this is always confusing when a motion is made in the negative.
I'm sorry?
So yeah, a voting for a yes when it's to deny is, yeah, sorry.
Voting yes to deny.
Mr. Rader,
Yes.
Mr. Esmond.
Yes. That being the case, is there any further business before the Board of Zoning Appeals? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
In a second. We are adjourned.